Hello there, and welcome to podcast number 54, where we're going to be talking about which games play best over Zoom, which games translate best to playing over Zoom. So we've got that to look forward to a bit later on. I'm Steve, and today we are not joined by Ian down there. We have.
It's me, Daryl.
It's almost like some sort of Power Rangers pose, I suppose.
Yeah, I was thinking we could fuse. We could do fusion,
Go
and
for a
like,
fusion.
I mean, could
Wasn't
you
that
imagine if we got that right?
That's more of a Dragon Ball Z thing, isn't it?
That's what I was thinking. Yeah,
Don't
because you started doing,
Power Rangers
you
just
start,
oh yeah, that whole
yeah,
thing.
like
Like
walking in the yeah, boom, yeah.
yeah. How are you anyway?
I'm okay. I'm sad that we can't fuse yet. I think we've not perfected the art.
I don't know whether it's about perfecting the art. I think it's more about not being in the room together. May have something to do with it.
I mean,
There's a lot of touching involved with fusion.
yeah, I mean, I like the idea that somehow we got to a level where we could do it via the internet. Like,
just
just
just fuse via electronic signals, I
just
suppose.
looking at each other intensely and doing this pose until one of us is one.
Yeah. Anyway,
I just want a beard, man. That's all I want. If
you
I
want
just
a
take your
beard.
beard, I don't care.
That's literally. Imagine if that was it. It was just you, but with a beard, and that's it.
Hello.
Everything,
And like,
nothing else is taken. None of my qualities, if I really have any, move over to you other than my beard, which is my biggest quality, if I'm perfectly honest.
I feel like you're. Yeah, no. I think we make an ultimate person actually because with my downright. Hold on, excuse me. With my
Okay.
downright absolute disgust at everything and your optimism, I think together it fuse to make like a normal human being. Do you know what I mean? Like that because you're quite optimistic and I'm very much like and it's just be like and a beautiful beard and like my really like weird mullet that's kind of growing. I think would be great.
Wait, a mullet that's growing?
Well, it stops and then it kind of gets like really long just at the back. And hold on, I'll show you. If I take off, like it's just
Yeah.
really long.
Do you know?
Horrible.
Yeah, it's weird because I don't think your hair is as long as when we recorded some of the footage we were going to use for the Resistance video. Because I went back and used some of the footage
Oh
for
yeah.
because we never got around to making the Resistance video because we needed the time when we were all off to make it
Yeah,
together.
yeah, yeah.
Because Don Eskridge very kindly gave us a big chunk of his time in order to help us with the information
That was
we
really
needed for
good.
the video. And we never got around to making it, and I feel really bad about that. But it's kind of we had the time off when we got to lockdown, but we couldn't get together in a room anymore.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
all of a sudden, we found ourselves in a situation where we've got the time,
We got the
but we don't
content.
have we don't
Just can't do
have
it.
everything else that's needed for it, which is super frustrating. But we definitely plan on doing this Resistance video at some point. But yeah, anyway, that's
Maybe
getting off
two.
point. I used for the video that I've just made. I had to get some footage of people playing in a room together,
Mm,
and I
mm,
used the
mm.
footage that we got from when we were all together playing the Resistance. And
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
your hair is quite long in that video.
See, I'm always, I think I've got this like kind of naivety that I'm always under the impression that it gets to a length and stops.
Yeah,
So where it is now is the length that in my mind and visually I see.
yeah.
But I think what actually happens is it gets longer, as in when I was 18 and it went to my shoulders, but I still maintained in my head and to everyone that it stopped just under my ears. But everyone was like, "Do you remember you had really long hair?" I was like, "No, it stopped at my ears. I don't know what you're on about." And then I see photos and go, "No, it's still at my ears, even though it's literally touching my shoulders."
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Anyway, let's get on to what's
Yes.
been going on the website to begin with. The Under Falling Skies review should have just gone live on the Saturday just gone. Really enjoyed making that one actually. Under Falling Skies is a great game. I really recommend checking out the video and seeing what it's all about. Really cool at the moment as well because it's a solo game and we could all use one of those at the moment. It's a really good one too. we also, I think I should probably announce, have kind of hit a wall with our reviews at this point. So it's such a shame. Under Falling Skies marked us catching up with reviews. We were completely up to date. And the next games we need to review, we actually had our copy of Far Away finally turn up, and I need a second person with me in order to play this game. There's no way to be able to play it by ourselves. We couldn't find an online version of it so that we can play it online. And the other game that we need to review at the moment, Spy Fest, that one is a party game. We need a lot of people to play it. Again, we can't find an online emulator at the moment to be able to play it online. So we've just got to wait until we can get back into a room together again. So reviews for the time being have been put on a hold, so we won't be doing any of those for a while, but we will be getting to the ones that are currently queued up from the various Patreon backers, who are wonderful.
Love you.
We certainly do. But in place, we've got a couple of video series coming up. We're having a look at doing a couple of list videos. There should be one going up following the week of this one, and then there's another series of videos we're working on as well, which I don't want to talk about too much just yet. But we do have plans to be able to fill the review void for the time being, but all reviews will eventually be done. We had this problem during the last lockdown as well, and like I said, we've caught up. We managed to get all of those reviews done that were promised. It's just a shame that it's come at a time when we're falling behind a bit again now. Yeah. That's where we are with the channel at the moment. Like I said, there is stuff to look forward to. I just don't want to explain too much just yet.
Mum's the word.
Exactly. So, now that that's out of the way, should we talk a little bit about what we've been playing? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll start this off with probably the chunkiest one. We played a bit of Castles of Mad King Ludwig. This was over Tabletopia, and it was me, you, shame Ian's not here to talk about it, and Phil as well. Really neat game. It almost felt a little bit Carcassonne-ish, but with a Euro game element to it, almost. In terms of, you have tiles, you're taking them and you're building them, but you're not in... This is more Euro gaming because you're not in direct competition with one another as such. You're not fighting over the features that you're putting down. Instead, when you're placing things, you're building rooms into a castle to try and score as many points as possible.
Yeah, there was...
I mean, there's a lot more to this than Carcassonne, I would say. I really enjoyed this game, and there are some really interesting aspects to it because it's not a simple tile laying game. There's also it's not really an auction.
I guess it is an economy style thing.
Yeah, so at the beginning of each round, one player becomes the master builder, and they'll have a number of tiles that are available for people to buy. But there's kind of like a line where you have differing amounts of money, and you can put one tile underneath each amount of money. So there's no bargaining with it. There's, like I said, it's not really an auction, but you're saying on your turn, this is how much this is worth. Does anyone want to buy it? Or it goes around the room and in clockwise order. One person buys one of the tiles that's laid out, and if they decide, I don't want any of them, they can just take 5,000 extra Deutschmarks, I think it's in, out of the bank instead. The idea is your end goal is to build a castle that meets King Ludwig's requirements. So he's a bit mad, so he may want a castle that's filled purely with bedrooms, or perhaps he wants loads and loads of underground rooms or something like that in his castle. And you're going to score more points the more of these you build. You're in direct competition with one another to have your castle, say, have the most bedrooms in it or something like that. The rooms then all have different scoring properties. So some will just automatically give you, well, they always give you points when you place them. But then, depending on the types of rooms that are connected to them in the castle, they'll either give a number of bonus points or they'll take points away from your score. Meaning you have to think a bit about how you're building. It also gives you a better idea of how you're going to price all your different rooms if you're the master builder, because you can kind of see which ones are going to be most popular, because they're going to be the ones that meet the requirements. There are 4 requirements that Ludwig usually has, and you're competing for each one of the 4. And the person who has the most of each one of these requirements gets 8 points, and then the next person gets 4 points or whatever. It just goes down depending on where you finished on it. What did you make of this game? Because I don't feel as if I've really played anything that's quite like it before.
So it had aspects, I would say, from other games where you had that auction style thing, and I'm fairly fond of that. The thing I found interesting about it was when it comes to the actual. So I went in quite big to start off with. I bought like a quite expensive piece and pretty much had no money left. But it's weird when it comes around to being the auctioneer, because you kind of have to look across the table and see what people want. And all right, fair enough, you're gaining money, which allows you to buy more expensive stuff. But it's trying to kind of figure out what they can afford, and if there's a piece that you technically want, you want to try and kind of put it up in a higher area to make it less desirable. So I know a couple of times I think I bought a few things that Ian wanted, only purely because of the turn order. And I think I'd like to play it again, but I'd like to sort of sit down and kind of think a bit more about the mini. I don't know what you really call it. I guess it's the scoring side of things, where matching symbols and stuff like that. It reminds me a little bit of Dead Man's Cabal, where at the end, if you had the perks that you guys were always buying into, but I never really bothered with. So for every excess amount of such and such, you would get this. So it was kind of similar with that, in a way where I found working out the rooms was quite difficult, because I think Ian had got quite a lot of the. What's the one with the hammer? What were they classified as?
I think they were like workshop rooms or something like that.
Yeah.
I know the ones you're talking about.
So he got quite a few of them, where I had a couple of rooms on the garden that needed those. And then a lot of the pieces you get as well, because it's a random sort of selection of pieces, they don't always really fit the option. Yeah. And I know with a couple of things, like I think you did and I did, we had a few places we just couldn't finish because there's no option. And all of the small little square pieces that were beautiful and would fit every kind of piece were kind of getting snapped up quite quickly. So you found a lot of the times you were sort of, as the auctioneer, trying to make the smaller pieces, although they may not have value as such, you want to try and make them higher, because it felt like those are the ones to cap off a lot of your rooms, which will then bonus your scores and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I did enjoy it. I think I really want to play it. I think my only one jip with it, I guess you could say, and that's nothing to do with the game. It's the fact that because of the way Tabletopia works, you can't actually click them to place.
Yeah.
I think I would enjoy doing that in real life, because it's a bit like Oceania or not Oceania.
Mega City Oceania, yeah.
Yeah, and stuff like that, where you're trying to build things and you're physically trying to place them together, and it's quite a nice level of that where you're trying to build them. Have you played it before now, or was that the first time?
So I'd kind of done a bit of a test playthrough on my own.
Yeah,
that was the first time that I played it with other people. It was, so I learned quite a bit from playing it with other people, because it was one of these games where I realised very quickly this isn't a game you can simulate very well. You need other people there to be making independent decisions themselves in order to actually affect the game. So I didn't play it very much. So like there were a couple of things that I learned from playing this, and I think all of us did. I think one of the things I noticed was we all put in a lot of stock into the points on the bonus cards that we have, because you get 2 bonus cards at the beginning of the game. They give you your own little secret objective. If you build in a certain way, you get bonus points at the end of the game. But in fact, they were small fry in comparison to the 4 main ones that were in the centre. And Phil, who we were playing with, it seemed like he did focus on trying to fulfill those, and he absolutely stormed.
Yeah, he did.
It,
yeah, he did some really good stuff with that.
going into the final scoring phase, me and Ian were way out in front, and Phil was actually lagging behind a fair bit. But he won all 4 of the room building bonuses.
Oh
and
yeah, for the sizes stuff.
Yeah, that just shot him right up that score track, because Ian had actually gained quite a lot of the bonus cards. Because another mechanic that I failed to mention was the fact that when you've finished a room, so in other words, all of the entrances on a room have a connecting room attached to them, you get a bonus depending on what room you've got. So I think where Ian was building a lot of workshops, I think workshops were the ones which had the bonus of you take more bonus cards. So he ended up with loads of bonus cards.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was pick 2, put 1 back kind of thing, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, but they tended to be a lot smaller in comparison, like I said, to those big bonuses you had towards the end of the game. Another mechanic that I failed to mention earlier as well, which I think is worth mentioning, is the idea that when you're auctioning off rooms, there's always rooms left over. And the leftover rooms that haven't been bought all get an 1,000 Deutschmark coin put on them.
Yeah, that was a good feature.
Meaning the rooms that no one wants become more desirable because you'll also get that cash bonus as well. So there are little things in there to try and balance it a little bit. Like, if no one's taking a room, that incentive is there to then take it purely for the money or something like that, you know? I think it worked out really well. I think, like, I've been putting a lot of stock into Board Game Geek recently and really paying attention to where things sit and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It is outside the top 100, but only just. It sits in around the 130 mark, something like that. I can see why it's there, to be perfectly honest with you. I think it's unique. I haven't played another game that's quite like it, and it works well as well. But like you said, Daryl, I think there's an element here that we're missing as well. The idea of actually having the pieces and putting them together and stuff like that. It was the fiddliest part of playing this, was trying to line up all the rooms and stuff. But yeah, otherwise, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I can recommend it to people, even on Tabletopia.
It wasn't massively. It wasn't. It wasn't too hard to actually to actually kind of get round to doing it eventually. Because I know initially we're kind of a little bit. There's quite a lot of different features, but once you kind of get around to it and play it a couple of times, you start going, oh well, actually that's actually not that bad.
I think it uses the iconography really well on it. One of my big concerns coming into playing this was, I was thinking to myself, this is going to be one of those games that's really annoying to score. But in fact, every tile has its own little symbol in the bottom left-hand corner. That's the one bit that I found a little bit confusing, because there are symbols all over these tiles. But generally, after a while, and once you get used to it, you're used to the bottom left being the icon for what type of room it is you've just put down, whether it's a living room, whether it's a food room, whether it's a utility room, whether it's an outdoor room. The number in the top left, I think it was the points you actually score just for putting this room down. And then all the symbols in the centre, it basically says, like, you'll have a number in a castle in the centre of a room, and then you'll have a number of icons next to them. And that'll always represent, if you connect a room of one of these symbols types, you'll score this many points.
Yeah.
That's basically how that works. So you're going to be picking up points as well from all over the place, basically.
So, interestingly enough, none of us ticked the negative points, did they? So a lot of cards gave you stuff for, like, if you were... So, I found there was one that was quite interesting. I think it was because Phil was making a lot of bedroom areas. There was a couple of sort of areas that would come up, like common room areas, music, all that kind of stuff, where basically entertainment, where they didn't go well with bedrooms. So if they were near a bedroom, you then started getting minus points, which I found really interesting because none of us actually triggered any of those. Because I guess it, even out of like accident, I thought that was quite an interesting thing that no one had like just picked it up and accidentally triggered the the anti points, which I thought was a cool little system as well. It's nice that they throw that in there that you might have to do that, which is kind of cool.
I think as well, if I remember right as well, I think I read somewhere in the rules that I forgot to put into play as well. I think I in retrospect I wouldn't have put this rule in on our first play as well. I
Yeah.
think it mentioned somewhere that if you miss something, you're not allowed to retroactively adjust it. So in other words,
Okay.
if you miss taking a bonus, you can't say, "Oh, I forgot to take my bonus. Can I take it
Can I
now?"
take
I
this?
think
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I think generally because of the way the game flows, I
yeah,
think it
yeah.
is actually a rule in it that if you miss it, tough luck. You have to
Okay.
call it on the spot or you miss it completely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I do think those kind of rules in games. I like it when they mention it in the rules that you're. It's meant to be. It's on you to be able to keep track of everything that you do. But I still think on a first play, it's always worth giving people just like that extra little
Yeah,
bit.
the benefit of the
Just
doubt almost, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. Anyway, shall we move on to our second game?
I could definitely say yes.
Our second game we had was. We'll cover it real quickly. We played more Deception Murder in Hong Kong.
Yes.
So we've been playing it wrong. I've managed to pick up a physical copy of it now, and it's given me the chance to read through the rules a bit more. We were actually making it a lot easier for the murderer. So a lot of the times we were only having two events as clues to be able to get people to guess
Yeah.
what the items were. So we weren't giving people enough information before, but we played it properly, and lo and behold, the murderer never won this time. Now that we were playing it properly, so
Me.
and it was me as well. I also did not get away with it. Yep. Like I say, I don't really want to touch on it too much because I feel like we've kind of already said that this is a really good game and we really recommend it. And I don't think anything's changed.
No, I don't think so. I mean, the only memorable thing from this was immediately you basically picked me as the murderer. Like, I think as a team, you were just like, well, I mean, I reckon it was punched by
So
some student or something. And I was like, oh god, oh no.
yeah, but I got swayed away from that
Yeah, you did,
because
which was quite good actually.
I think it was to do with the duration, how long it took
Yes, of
to
course,
kill,
yes.
and Phil, our forensic investigator at the time, put that the death would have been brief,
Mm,
and the way I always think about the way someone would punch someone, like the way I think about the various stages of it, because you've the options were instant, brief, gradual, days, and then weeks,
yeah.
or it's something like that to give you quite a large time frame to be able to pin where this happens.
Mm,
And he'd chosen brief, and I can kind of see where he's going with that. But usually, my way of thinking is, if let's say you were to be punched once or something like
yeah.
that, would that have instantly killed a person? Probably not.
It'd
Uh,
be some there'd be some circumstances to that, wouldn't there? You'd have to
yeah,
like, yeah,
you have to catch someone just right, and it would. I think we had something where earlier where it wasn't regarded as an accident; it was put as furious or something like that
yeah,
instead,
yeah.
which also works perfectly for someone punching someone to death.
Mm,
But I tend to feel that brief is something where it takes one blow; it's not instant, but there's a lingering effect that basically kills them or something like that. I think it was my argument before when the murder weapon was electricity, and
yes, that was it. Yeah,
the argument between instant and brief was it wouldn't be instant, but it would be very brief, like a couple of seconds, and they'd be gone. Whereas I feel like punching would be more of a gradual thing. I feel like if it was furious, it wouldn't have just been one. They would have punched again and again and again.
Yeah.
And I felt like that. I would have put punch as more of a gradual thing. Don't get me wrong, it's happened before where it's been fairly instant, where it's happened.
Yeah.
But I think a
I
lot
think
of
that
the
was
times when
the
that
thought in my
happens, it
mind.
tends to be an accident. You know, when it's deliberate, I think I think Ian's argument was, what if you're Floyd Mayweather? And yes,
Yeah.
in that case, that would be brief. Like, yeah. So it was one of those weird kind of things, but we still got there in the end. I think you were pretty much nailed on with the whole thing of it being in a dormitory. Your clue
Yeah.
was a flash drive, I think it was.
Yeah, so I think it was I picked a USB drive, and immediately they picked that because I can't remember what the significance was, but it just felt like I was definitely I was definitely getting yeah. Well, I was basically going to be getting straight away pictured for it, and it was just like, how have they picked it so quickly?
Yeah.
But for once, I felt that the investigator had had a really good selection of stuff that really worked in a sort of story narrative. You could really picture it like, okay, well, it's possibly jealousy. It's a uni student stolen something, or there's photos or something like that on a USB drive, and they've got in a scuffle, and one of them's punched the other one, and maybe they banged their head or something, or it's been an instant one knockout punch, and you're just like, damn, and they were really going through it, and I was like, oh god, no, please don't.
Yeah.
And then I'd just be like, oh, maybe it's not, maybe it's a knife, and you're just like, no.
Yeah, I mean, a similar thing happened. Like, one thing that I definitely took away from this was that Phil and Ian are very much on the same wavelength. Very
Yeah.
much on the same wavelength. Because when I was the murderer, I definitely chose my murder weapon quite well, because I noticed again that all of us had something that would lead towards a poisoning of some sort.
Yeah,
And
gotcha.
very much picked that as a murder weapon. And then my clue was a speaker, and that very
Oh
much was my
yeah.
undoing, because at first, because I kind of tied it in because I think you might have had a flute, you or Ian had a flute in there as your clue for one of them, and someone else
Yeah, I
had
think
another
so.
thing. So I tried to pick things where you could link it into everything, but then the sound option came up, and the clue given was it was a prolonged sound, and there was nothing that
Yeah.
fit it other than a speaker. So it very much cut everything down at that point. But I was kind of, at the time, I think that wasn't one of the original things on there, but it was entertainment, which I was like, yes, we've all got something for entertainment. That's
Yeah,
fine.
that's useful.
I'm safe for the time being. But yeah, it was when the round came up where it talked about the prolonged sound, and speaker was the only one which really fit. It was kind of, yeah, I was done at that point. But yeah, like I said, I don't want to dwell on this too much. We've talked about this plenty in the last few
Mhm.
podcasts. Deception Murder in Hong Kong, if you can get a copy of it, I would massively recommend it, or find an online emulator, because it's really great.
It's good fun.
Okay, so the last game that I want to talk about in terms of things that we've been playing recently, Viticulture. I want to talk about a little bit. Viticulture is really interesting because it's a worker placement game with a bit of a twist to it. So I think the only worker placement game you've ever played before was Gugong, right? Where it was played with cards instead. I suppose Dead Man's Cabal is a bit of a worker placement game as
Yeah.
well, I suppose. But yeah, the idea of worker placement games is you have a number of workers, you have a board with actions that you can take on them. You take one of your workers on your turn, you place them on a space, and you take the action that's related to that space. In a sense, you can also block other people taking that action as well, because usually there's only one or so many spaces to be able to take that action. So generally, going first is quite important
Yeah.
in a worker placement game. And this one does a couple of really interesting things. So first of all, the first player isn't necessarily the person that goes first. They simply are the first to choose when they kind of take their turn. So you have a wake up track on one side of the board, and in spring, because essentially every round is 1 year in the winemaking business. So in spring, you determine your turn order. So starting with the first player, there is a list of bonuses that gradually get better and better and better. But the better bonus you take in spring, the more likely it is you're going to be last. So if you take the best option on there, which is gain an extra worker for the turn, you're going to go last. So you may have an extra worker, but you may not be able to take the spaces you want to use. So that's the downside to it. So there's a lot of difficult decisions to make in there. Then you have something I've never seen in worker placement games before. You have a split over how you place your workers. There is the summer period where you have a number of spaces on the board which are related to summer. So it might be things like planting a vine, or attracting visitors to your vineyard for tours and stuff like that to make a bit of money. So you place workers, you do all the actions that you want to do during the summer period, like say planting vines ready for the winter season. Then once everyone's placed their summer workers down and taken their turns, you then go into the fall period, which is just a really simple period where in turn order you all get to choose whether you take a winter action card or a summer action card, but that's not really too important there. Then you go into winter, and you don't get your old workers back. You have to judge how much you want to do in summer and how much you do in winter, and judge when you're going to stop placing workers on spaces because you need some more for the winter section. So you may end up going through summer going, yeah, actually, I don't want to take any turns during summer. And just completely skipping it because everything you want to do is in winter. So winter is when you start picking grapes, you start crushing your grapes into wine, and it's also where you start filling orders as well. Orders is ultimately what gets you the most points towards the end of the game, but there are lots of action spaces that you can play off of the summer and winter action cards that I mentioned earlier. You can play them. A lot of them have scoring opportunities on them as well. But you also have your own player mat where you're actually placing buildings as well. So another thing you can do in summer is you can choose to build a structure instead, which maybe will give you access to a medium-sized wine cellar so that you can store more and better wines. Or you've got a windmill, which every single time you harvest a field, you get a victory point as well. So there's lots of little things you can do to try and boost your score. And it's simply a race to 20 points. But the journey there is really interesting just because I've never seen this done in a game before, where not only you think about what spaces you want to play during your turn, but how many workers you're going to save and how many you're going to just blow all in summer, for example. It's really interesting, a really interesting way to approach a worker placement game, and I really, really like it. Will be interesting to play it again in a room with people.
Yeah.
And I'm dreading teaching this one as well, because
Okay.
I still find the worst time I think I've ever had trying to teach a game was Gugong. Probably, because even by the end, it's either that or Escape Plan. They're the two games that I had a nightmare trying to explain to people.
I want to say Escape Plan was one of the ones that actually no, but yeah, to be fair, like you say, both of those were quite. There was quite a lot of in-depth stuff to them, and I think before we actually got around to playing the game, we were very much still kind of like, well, what's going on here, kind of thing.
Yeah, but this
I don't
one,
think that's anything to do with you. That's more just the concept of the games. There's so many.
I can see this falling very much into that same category as well. I also feel like it's kind of hard to explain as well, the fact that there's a real importance in this game of aging stuff. So
Yeah.
your grapes and your wine will both age at the end of the year. So if you have harvested a 2-value white grape, for example, let's say you did that.
Yeah, yeah.
So you place a token on the white 2 grape. At the end of you have a choice then. You can either wait and not crush that grape into wine and have the grape age, or you can turn it into wine and the wine will also age at the end of the year as well. So they'll get better the more you save them. So you can actually start planning ahead of time what how you're going to eventually fill your orders that you've got, because essentially that's the heart of the game. You've got your order cards. They'll say we need one 5-value red wine and a 4-value white wine, for example, or something like that. So
Yeah, yeah.
you can say you can start putting certain grapes down despite the fact you don't need them on that turn. You're simply going to let them age so that they're ready on a future turn, so you can start filling loads of things at once and therefore taking fewer actions. You can do a lot of clever stuff in here. You really can, like players that are experienced at this game will really be able to have that joy of being able to plan steps ahead, have things queued up and ready. Like, for example, having your small, medium, or large cellar is quite important, because each one can only hold up to a certain value of wine. So if you
Right.
want to, I think if you want to grow a 4-value white wine, let's say, but you only have a small cellar, your wine will age until it gets to a value 3 wine, and then it will not age into a value 4 wine unless you build your medium cellar. So in a way, this is again something that you can do. Like, say, you could have one of your white grapes in that case. Let's say you were actually after an 8-value white wine. You could leave a grape to age up to 8, because you cannot transfer that into wine straight away. Like,
Right.
if you were to transfer that at 3 into a wine, it would stop there, because you haven't built your cellars to be able to grow it into that value wine. So you could just leave a
Okay.
grape. You could just leave a grape to age, build on your next turn, and then you've got that grape ready to be crushed into the value wine that you actually need. So there's lots of stuff to think about like that. Like I said, there's lots of crazy ways to be able to get around a lot of the limitations of your current farm, which is really good. Again, this game, I think it's something crazy, like ranked at like number 8 or something on Board Game Geek.
Jeez.
I'm going to have a look at that real quick. But I can understand why this is genuinely ranked so high.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because, like I said, I can see how you can be really, really clever with this game. Like I say, it's a bit more of a grown-up kind of game. I can tell you right now, though, that Viticulture is number 23. Not quite as high as I thought it was, but still very, very high on that list. Like I say, this one may be a little difficult to get to the table, though, because ultimately, like I find, usually if you say, hey, do you fancy playing a game that's all about the Victorian Industrial Revolution, or do you want to play a
No.
game about winemaking? Most people will usually say to you, no, I want to play the game that's about dwarves and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Drinking the
spaceships,
wine.
and yeah. You get a lot of that. But yeah, that is Viticulture,
Okay.
and that is all the games we've been playing this week.
Oh
So
my.
I think it's time to move on to a little bit of news.
Tiny little bit of news.
Okay, news. First up, this is one that me and Daryl will probably talk about and waffle on about for a little bit. It
I was gonna
is
say there's no option for Ian to interject here.
no Unmatched. We have a little news, and if I was to get you my newly bought copy of Unmatched here, you'll notice there's something different down here.
Should I go get mine and we can compare?
Sure, why not?
Be right back.
But anyway, as you could probably see, they've changed distributor. So Mondo always used to do all of the distribution for worldwide sales and stuff, but Europe have now got Yellow to basically distribute the European version of the game. This is good because it's largely been really hard to get hold of in Europe. So this actually is a story from a little while ago, only a couple of days ago. So basically, like I said, they're going to be distributing across Europe. And at the moment, the only ones that are actually announced for it are the Season 1 box. Like, there you go. There is no yellow logo in the bottom corner of that one.
Weirdly, only since you you made it clear to me that it's changed, the actual box is completely changed. So, like, the logo from the other companies is completely on the other side on your one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what you've already said. I assume it's that nothing else has changed, but yeah.
Yeah, like, I think as soon as I saw that it was a different production company involved in producing this, my initial thought was, man, I really love those wash miniatures. I sure hope they've kept them together. Sure enough, they have. So as far as I can see, the production is exactly the same as it was before. I think this is simply a distribution deal. At the moment, the Volume 1 box and Bigfoot versus Robin Hood are the only two at the moment that Yellow have announced that they're going to distribute. They have announced they're going to look at bringing the other sets over. There is a little bit of suggestion on the Meeple's Corner article that I have up here. Like I say, the website we're looking at is meeplescorner.co.uk. By all means, go and check them out. They seem to suggest on there that licensing could be an issue. So I think they highlighted the Buffy and Jurassic Park ones. It's a little bit unclear whether Yellow will be distributing those.
So the Buffy one's not actually. That's still on pre-order. I think it's coming out.
It is, March,
April?
end of March.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's somewhere around there. Hopefully this isn't going to change the Cobble and Fog one, because that's the one I really, really want.
Yes, that's the one we've both been sort of eyeing up, because it's just got some very interesting characters.
So yeah, it's Sherlock Holmes, the Invisible Man, Jekyll and Hyde, and Dracula, I believe. Very interested in that. Funnily enough, the Buffy one is the one which I'm not so excited about, and it's not a knock on the fact that it's Buffy, because I like Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I'm gonna get it.
I think the thing is, though, it's like the most unappealing of all the boxes that have been released so far, because so far each of the individual boxes has given us like some really interesting matchups in them, whereas if you were to just buy the Buffy one,
of course,
there's not really an interesting matchup there necessarily, because we've already seen them all on screen. Like, half the fun of the
is creating the mysteries.
Yeah, exactly. And I funnily enough think it actually is another problem that I might have with the slew of Marvel ones that are lined up. Like, we've mentioned that there's at least 4 coming out of Marvel ones, and they are just all pure Marvel characters in the sets. It'll be really interesting to see if they ever get a DC license in the future.
Yeah, I think So I know where you're coming from. If you were to just buy the individual box and that was it, you were done with it. I think the ones, like you say, the ones that are fixed licenses aren't the greatest. I mean, I would say the Jurassic Park one works well because, again, who doesn't want to be Raptors versus InGen? However, I think to fully experience this game and to really kind of give off that kind of, I don't know, I want to say like school child, who would win out of Sherlock Holmes or Vlad, sorry, not Vlad the Impaler, what's his name? King Arthur. And you'd be like, well, that's never going to happen. Whereas this game gives you the option to. So you do need to buy, I would say, primarily the 2 sets that work really well, I think, with everything would be the original one, which we both now got, and the Cobble and Fog, because they have such a varied collection of people. You can go, well, Sherlock Holmes is now fighting raptors, guys.
It's kind of funny, though, because the Cobble and Fog one, you kind of like start off with the universal monsters. So you've got Dracula, you've got Jekyll and Hyde, and then you've got the Invisible Man in there. So at first you're kind of thinking to yourself, maybe that'll fall into the same category as the Buffy one. But then you've got Sherlock Holmes in there as well, which
Just
is
thrown
something
in for like the
completely different in there, which is enough to keep me interested in that box. Like the first box was just, that was the wildest and probably the most
yes.
interesting box that I've seen in
It was
Unmatched so
such
far.
a unique collection.
Yeah, exactly. And they haven't quite captured that again since, I don't think, though.
The double packs work quite well. So the one I'm kind of curious about is Little Red Riding Hood versus Beowulf. I think that's a
Yeah,
very interesting mashup. And I will say, having played Bigfoot versus Robin Hood, two things you would never have ever in a world together.
yeah,
And yet again, uniquely, I would say the only thing is Robin Hood does fight very much like a copy, almost a carbon copy of Medusa. Very
yeah,
much the same sort of thing. So I feel like the two ranged characters fighting each other is a bit of a weird one.
yeah,
But yeah, I do kind of like this. The only one I will say, and I think we've spoken about this before, that it kind of doesn't fit with anything, but works really well on its solo person. It is a solo person. It's the Bruce Lee figure. It
yeah.
just has a unique ability to kind of recycle cards, which, and again, who doesn't want to see Bruce Lee fight any of these characters? I think that's why they did it. It's a single character. It slots in everything. It's perfect.
Totally. Like, funnily enough, I was mucking around with it a little bit
Yeah, yeah.
the other day, and I think there was like one thing I could see in the game which I would level a kind of like little criticism at, and that is
Mm.
I was playing a game with uh, King Arthur versus Medusa, because
Yeah, yeah,
they were the two characters out of the base set that I haven't seen yet, and
yeah.
it was really unfortunate because Merlin, Arthur's sidekick, died immediately. Like, it was just a case of Arthur didn't have really any defense cards in his hand. Medusa used, I think it was called Stone Gaze, which
Yes,
is,
that's a
it
good one.
hits, but it's got like a really low chance of hitting because it's got such low damage. But if it does hit, it then does 8 additional damage to it as
Yeah,
well,
it's really cool.
and it wiped out Merlin on the first turn. And then Medusa just played as just a stand back and just pick off Arthur, because you can use the
Mm.
boost movement thing to move him
Yeah,
quicker.
yeah.
But the problem was always he got, I think it was when he got down to 1 health. And the problem is Medusa has an ability that at the beginning of her turn, she'll deal 1 damage to
Yes, 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 yes.
anyone that's in her zone. So all of a sudden, I would say 3/4 of the game was King Arthur on 1 health
Running
and
away.
trying to figure out a way to hit Medusa without ending in her zone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it just became a bit tedious.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, that for one is like, that's a situational thing that can
Mm.
happen within the game. And I think that does have to be taken into consideration as a bit of a criticism, that sometimes these abilities will work against the game, basically.
Yeah.
But generally, it's a really, really good game. Really
So
fantastic.
I would say that it does say it's a 20 to 40 minute game. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I realize they mean possibly with 4 players, you're adding extra time. I The only thing I would say about this game, and it works very similar to other kind of quick type games, is that I've had it before. I think me and you did it when we first played it. We got to the sudden death mode, and I would say there's when you get to the sudden death mode, it doesn't really. It's almost like the game's added it in order to, if you for some reason are playing about an hour with 2 people, because you're trying to kind of avoid the other person. I think this game really shines as a straight up get in, do damage, move back a bit, do more damage. I think you really have to play this game as a in your mind. It's a quick game. I'm killing my opponent. I'm done. We can play another game. Okay, I'm gonna do this again. I'm gonna play as a different character, because I think when you start playing it like a strategy game, where you would kind of take a breath back and you look at your cards and you play a bit more scheming and stuff like that. I think that's where it starts to let a little bit of the flaws, like you say, where you were down to 1 health, and then you're trying to figure out a way of getting past Medusa. We've done it I did it in the past where I was playing it. I think it was with you, where we got to the bit where we basically every time you mandatory have to draw a card, you'll die because you can't. You're taking health, so you are just
Mm.
bleeding out. And then at that point, you might as well just go, well, I might as well run head first and see who survives. So, in my opinion, it's much better as a very much like, 20-minute game. You're just smashing through it because it's so quick to pick up, it's so quick to play, and then just go, all right, cool, that was good. Do you want to play another game? Yeah, of course, let's play another game. Swap some
Yeah.
characters? Yeah, sure. I think that's just definitely where it lies as a the perfect optimum game.
I mean,
But
essentially, you have three things to remember that you can do, and then everything
yeah,
else is listed on the cards, basically, which, admittedly, some people will look at and just go, I don't quite understand how this one works,
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
something like that. But generally, it's a really simple game, really easy to teach, really neat little dueling game. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's good. It's good. I'm really glad I've got a copy of it, finally. Okay, one more thing that we have in the news is Magic the Gathering. It's expanding. So,
Can't be stopped.
yeah, basically, this comes courtesy of Zatu, actually. They have a little bit of a new section there. They covered this one. They have this new story running that Wizards of the Coast have announced that they're looking at a number of crossovers with Magic the Gathering. This isn't the first time that it's happened, and it's always been very mixed, the reception before. So they did it twice. They did it once with, they introduced a number of Godzilla inspired cards,
That's quite cool.
and all they did was they swapped out the artwork and just replaced it with
Yeah.
like an ability on a card that they'd already had. Went down really, really well. People enjoyed it. I can see why. Godzilla kind of would fit in
Yeah.
a Magic the Gathering kind of setting. The other one didn't go down quite so well, and that was The Walking Dead did a crossover with Magic the Gathering, and they had their own unique cards that could be used in. It was a certain version of the game. I've forgotten what it was called now. It wasn't the Legacy thing. But anyway, for a start, I can see this. It was not in fitting with Magic the Gathering's theme, and I can 100% see that. Seems a bit weird. Like, fair enough, you can put Walking Dead zombies in it, maybe, but if you started putting the characters in as well, you've got to jump through a number of hoops to be able to make that somewhat canonical, I suppose. Like, I can't see it.
I like the quote. The Walking Dead set the zombie cat amongst the pigeons.
Yeah.
What a beautiful bit of words there.
Yeah, but I mean, there were a lot of arguments as well that where they had their own unique rule sets, they were also a bit overpowered as well. So apparently, it's already been announced that they're doing a Dungeons and Dragons crossover with Magic the Gathering, which makes all the sense in the world. I mean, they're both owned by Wizards of the Coast. It kind of like was only a matter of time before you saw this crossover. Really, again, that's going to work great. The other two that they've announced, Lord of the Rings, that'll work great. Like, fits in with everything that's going on in there.
Yeah.
Then Warhammer 40,000.
See, I find that going to be very weird because it's out of the lot. That's a very futuristic choice.
It depends on how they approach it. They actually could make this work. Let's say this is a chaos invasion.
Yeah.
Chaos
Okay.
creatures and stuff like that, like maybe the weirder
Orcs.
side of it. Yeah, orcs as well could work.
Well,
but I would
maybe.
almost argue that a lot of these things would work better with regular Warhammer. Rather, like they specifically
Yeah,
said,
like the
this is
fantasy
40,000, and you're kind of like mixing dark sci-fi with dark fantasy at that point, and I can see there being a bit of an outcry over that. Like I said, the other things they've announced are all quite they suit basically. They could fit quite seamlessly into the Magic the Gathering setting. Like it's that same kind of fantasy world kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't know how well received. Like I swear they've just gone Warhammer 40,000 because I think a lot of people that are into Warhammer 40,000 are also quite into Magic the Gathering. I think that's literally been their thinking there, without thinking how seamlessly it all mixed together. I don't know.
Right. Okay.
Do you not think?
I mean, I don't. I've not really. I don't think I've ever played Magic, and I know you said it's quite an easy game to pick up. I just think I've never actually played it. Knowing from what we personally sell
Hmm.
and the pictures that I've seen on there, again, I can understand giant lizards, Godzilla, fair enough. Zombies to a certain extent, but like some sort of undead creature, just generic creatures, yes. Lord of the Rings, again, fantasy, hobbits, dwarves, elves, Nazgul, again, all that kind of stuff works really well. Um, I Dungeons and Dragons again, yes, but unless, like you say, they're going a chaosy kind of mystical side of things, it does feel like you would probably have gone for maybe Warhammer, Sigma, or fantasy stuff, just because it's kind of fitting of the theme, you know, like just like I mean, I don't know, are there guns in Magic? Does anyone have guns? Is there tech like that kind of advanced tech?
Definitely not the kind of advanced tech that you really see in there. Like, I would say like when you're seeing firearms in Magic the Gathering, it's like muskets and stuff like
Oh,
that.
like
Really,
flintlocks and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Okay,
stuff
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Really.
Okay, so again, yeah, I mean, I can see, like, yeah, I can see that, but just straightforward if they were like, we put Space Marines in it, or
I th-
Ultramarines or something like that, it'd be like, great.
I think as soon as you start putting stuff like that in there, and they start having to say stuff like, "There's a tear in Rift Time," and they're coming through a portal, and the worlds are
Oh,
colliding, and stuff like that. As soon as you do that, you're going to split people because you're going to have the people that just want to see it happen,
yeah,
and they'll be like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm fine with this. This is two things I really like coming together." And then you'll get the people that are like, "No, this is lazy. I don't want to see this." I think they're the two types of people that you will see arguing this case, I imagine.
yeah, I could, yeah, I mean, I don't see many, I don't know, I mean, maybe it will be a hit, I don't know, but it does seem interesting that they kind of did the same thing with the two already, and one hit, one didn't, so I wonder how it'll work.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, that's all the news that we have for you this week.
There's no more
We have
news.
no more, I'm afraid. Um, we also do not have an audience question this week. By all means, if you would like to ask us a question, send them to everybodydiceshow@gmail.com, and we will answer any of your questions on the next podcast. Doesn't even have to be about board gaming. Ask us whatever. We
What's
shall
your
answer it.
favorite fruit? That's a good one.
I'm not answering that now. Someone might
No,
ask that.
no,
Someone
I'm not going
may
to
be
answer it.
emailing us and asking what's your favourite fruit,
Just
and
tapping
we'll answer
away.
that next time. Yeah, not answering it,
And
Daryl. No.
it'd be a 4 hour lecture on why I think that fruit is the king of all fruit. And then we'll fight, and it'll be awkward, and we'll have to make up at the end and be like, I'm really sorry. I can see why your fruit would have a place in the kingdom, you know. And they all bring their own aspects to the fruit table.
Yeah. So that actually brings us now to our big topic. Big topic. Always voted on by our patrons. We always give our patrons 3 topics to choose from. They get to vote on which one they'd most like us to talk about. If you would like to become one of those patrons, go to patreon.com/everybodydice. And on there you can help shape the content on our site, like say, voting on these polls for what we talk about on the podcast. Like I said earlier in the podcast as well, usually you would vote on reviews for games, which is still going on. We are simply just making, basically, we're making a list of all the stuff that's being voted on by our patrons, and we shall do them in the future. So that will be carrying on. You also get access to our newsletter as well, where we kind of talk about non-board gamey things that we recommend to you each and every month. Anyway, the 3 topics they had this time around. First off was, has a theme ever put you off an otherwise great board game? Also, which classic games hold up in the current game market with serious players? But the one that our patrons voted for this month, as you can already tell from the title of this video, which games translate best to playing over Zoom? Okay, so we've done quite a lot of gaming over Zoom over this lockdown period. I certainly would say, before we get into any gaming things, the best tools that I found for playing games on there are definitely Tabletopia and Board Game Arena. I would say I don't recommend Tabletop Simulator quite as much. Still worth a look at. There's still games on there that work, but if you're after a more heavy gaming experience, I would stay well away from Tabletop Simulator and stick to Tabletopia or Board Game Arena. But individual, actually no, Daryl. Before we get into the individual games, do you have an opinion over which systems you seem to prefer? Not games, but our tools that we use.
I mean,
Bear in mind you've also got the browser-based stuff as
yeah,
well.
do you know what? I was going to
Like
say,
the
weirdly,
individual
the browser-based stuff, I actually think is probably one of the better options. I know it sounds really, really stupid, but because it does work very well in a low-key setting, it works very well, and we've had some pretty fun games out of it. Tabletopia, I like Tabletopia purely based on the fact that everything is built for that kind of script, if you will. So it is designed to be made like that, and it's made by the official people, and that's great. However, I do sometimes miss some of the aspects that are in Tabletop Simulator. And that is purely based on the fact that some of the controls are a little bit quicker. Like, I know picking stuff up in Tabletop Simulator is a lot easier than picking it up in Tabletopia. I think the only thing we seem to all we're getting better at it, but the only thing I think we all seem to had a bit of an issue was stacking cards or restacking cards. Shuffling's easy because you can just do the little right click and it brings up the dial. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's just grouping stuff together can be a bit of a pain. I mean, again, maybe it's just certain games work better. I can see all three work really well, but I think personally I really enjoyed the website browser ones.
Yeah,
They're just silly, like retro almost in a weird way.
the thing is we haven't even scratched the surface with them either. I can tell you right now, starting to get into some games that I probably would recommend. We never got around to playing Fake Artist Goes to New York.
No, that one sounded really good.
So it's amazing. You literally the browser website address that you go to basically takes you to a blank pad of paper, and it actually tracks that you're drawing one line and will only let you draw one line before it moves on to the next player. They have to draw one line. The next player then has to draw one line, with the idea that everyone that's playing, bar one person, knows what we're trying to draw. And it's up to everyone to figure out, after everyone's drawn two lines each, you then try to figure out who's the fake artist, who does not know what the rest of us are drawing. But they can win the round, even if we all guess right, if they can tell what we were drawing. So you have to ride kind of like a fine line of drawing something that's really, really obvious to everyone else and not drawing something that's too obvious that the fake artist will be able to pick up what's being drawn. Along those lines as well, we never got to play Telestrations. There's a really good Telestrations app online. Telestrations is basically the old... it's more of a mainstream game, actually. But Scrawl is practically the same game. It's kind of like Chinese Whispers meets Pictionary, basically. So the idea is, at the beginning of the round, everyone's given a word, and they draw what's that word or phrase. Then the idea is that gets covered up. You pass it on to the next person, so everyone's passing one picture around. So if in a 4-player game, there would be 4 paper pads being passed around. The next person that it gets passed to will look at the picture and write what they think that is. It will then get passed round. The next person looks at the word that's written down and then draws that, and then passes it to the next person. The idea is, if the same thing at the end is what was drawn, then you get points, basically. But like what always happens in a game of Chinese Whispers, things get lost in translation on the way round, so really weird stuff starts getting drawn. Another game that's really good to play on over Zoom and stuff like that. Like literally, a lot of these all come from watching a really good series called Board Game Club on YouTube. It's on the No Rolls Barred website. They've been playing a lot of games over Zoom, and it's where I've been getting a lot of the ideas of stuff to play online and stuff.
Yeah.
In the meantime, but a lot of these secret role games are fantastic to play online. So like Secret Hitler was amazing.
Yeah, that was really good fun, to be fair.
Yeah.
I like the oddly like that really low budget, low key betting game.
Wits and
Like
Wages.
yeah, that was actually I really enjoyed the again like almost like an old school kind of thing. I really enjoyed the fun of kind of just having to answer a question and then guessing the answer, writing it down on a piece of paper. It's very much a designed for webcam game, and I think that's so fantastic. Like, I mean, all of them are, but like that was so good fun because it would just be okay, ready, go, and then I think that was just really fun about it, and it made just so awkward was Mike and me just exchanging angry notes to each other whilst writing them. I think I still got them somewhere, but like it's just I had to save them in the end. I mean, I've still got all my Hong Kong ones as well, like
Yeah.
Steve, severe injury, bathroom, location, trace. So like I just think there's some really fun to sort of having these like bits of, I might frame them.
I mean, that,
like this is.
to be honest, you touched on it there as well, and I don't think it really even needed much for mention. Deception Murder in Hong Kong plays fantastically online. Really, really good. In fact, I would say that is the game, more so than any others, that I would recommend above all other games. Like I said, there's a few where you don't even need apps to play them. One game that I really wanted to play if we could ever get more people on is a game called Just One, which again, you don't need any kind of app or anything like that. All you need is someone to make lists of words with a number next to each word. And at the beginning of every round, one person basically turns off their web camera, and everyone else, they give you a number before they turn off their webcam. And then you reveal on the list which word they've chosen. And then everyone in the group needs to write down a word that will guide them to that chosen word.
Right.
But with the caveat that when you reveal to to one another what you've written down, any doubles or any synonyms get wiped off the board. So it's a cooperative game where everyone either wins or loses. So if the word that we got was egg and 3 people wrote down nest, for example, those 3 clues would be wiped off the board, and the person that comes back that needs to guess the word would get 3 less clues. It is very possible. Let's say you had 5 people guessing that same word, and the other 2 people, let's say one wrote bird and the other one tried to be clever and wrote something like, it's avian, isn't it? Like,
yeah, avian
is what people would write in terms of a bird or something like that. They would still both get wiped off the board because they mean the same thing. So it's very possible that then there are no clues to be able to give them, and you just have to hope they pick a word out of nowhere.
Can I suggest something and see if my brain works differently to yours?
Sure.
Which it does. So if the word was bird, you've got to try and guess, right?
Yeah.
If I just put is the word on a piece of paper, would you know where I'm going with that?
Bird is the word.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think...
Do you think you'd be able to work that one out or not? Or do you think that's definitely my madness?
It depends what other clues were given. But, I mean, you'd have to note, again, that you can only put one word down as well. So it wouldn't quite work.
I like the idea you just put word.
Yeah.
Like, okay, could be Daryl's idea.
Yeah. I wonder if you wrote I, whether that would work, to get them to think along the lines of bird's eye.
Oh, yeah.
Or something like that. I don't know.
Captain, maybe.
But I mean, this is the problem, is you have to start being clever, because you know that if you all write down the same thing, then you're screwed, kind of thing. Like, for example, someone might have written down for bird, someone might have written down Hitchcock, or something like that, you know?
That's smart.
But the problem is if you get two people trying to be clever and two people write down Hitchcock, so the group kind of like gets into this real kind of muddle. It's a really good game, really underrated. You can play it without the use of the physical game, but it's worth buying the physical game. It's only real cheap. Would totally recommend that. Another one that we never got to play that I was desperate to play because they did this on Board Game Club as well was Dobbins and Bobbins, which isn't actually a board game. It's an old game they played over the radio. I think it was on the Mark and Lard show, I think they said. And the idea is everyone has to text you the name of a horse. And
you told me about this one.
you then look online and find the name of an actual horse that rode the day before, because they're always there. And the idea is the group has to pick out the real one from all the ones that were given. And it's just watching some of the puns that come out when you watch people play this game. I think my favourite one was someone wrote down the horse name as Paddock and Chips. I think that was probably my favourite one. But
Paddock and Chips. I really like that.
And I think there was another one, Stir Up Some Trouble, as well.
Oh, so, that's really good.
Yeah, so I mean, I've already thought of a few that if we ever get to play this, I really want to pull out. But yeah, I so want to get a group of us together and give that a try, because it's just fantastic. Just such a good game.
That does sound quite good.
Yeah. In terms of, if I move away from games that you would find on browser-based apps and stuff like that, I wanted to focus more on big box stuff that you would find on your game shelves and stuff like that, that you typically have to go onto Tabletopia or something like that to play. The Crew, I think, was quite a good one to play.
Yeah, that worked really well, actually.
I think what you're really looking at there is you're looking for board games that don't have an awful lot of components to them, because the more components that are on there, the more muddled they tend to get on programs like Tabletopia and stuff like that. Like we mentioned earlier, I don't think I could probably recommend Castles of Mad King Ludwig on there, because it was hard to position all your castle tiles down. You're not getting that full kind of tactile feel for everything in the game that you would get for if you're playing it on a table. I don't think it worked quite as well as it would by using Tabletopia. Trying to think if there's anything else that's been particularly good on them, because like I say, you really want to find something that doesn't have too many moving parts.
I would say Parks had very much similar.
Yeah,
I would
right.
say there wasn't too many components, but
that felt like the limit, if I'm perfectly honest. I think unless you have a game group that is very, very patient and they all know the rules already, they already know how all the systems work, Parks is about as deep as you can go without having all that knowledge, I think. I had grand designs on playing things like Brass Birmingham and Paladins of the West Kingdom and stuff like that on Tabletopia, but oh god, that would be rough, I think. But I think that's the best advice I can really give for that. Keep it simple. Look for simple games to play online.
keep it sweet.
Unless, like I say, unless you've got a group that are absolutely dead set on playing a certain game and you all already know it. That is the only way I would say otherwise to go into it and play it online, I would imagine. I would love to go on to, like, they've got Sulkin, the game with all the gears and stuff. They've got that on Board Game Arena, but I just really wouldn't want to play that too much. Although things on Board Game Arena are far more scripted, so it might play a little better. Would like to have a look into that, maybe. Do you have anything else to add, Daryl? Because I feel like I've had everything that I need to say said.
No, I mean I would like to try a few more things. The only thing, my only one criticism with Tabletopia, and I think it's only because we came across this and it was a bit upsetting, is there was a couple of games on there that offered a solo play
Mm-hmm.
and a multiplayer, and then when you clicked in them, you realise that actually to play with more than one person becomes the premium version. So some stuff, obviously, weirdly it came up in the free section, which kind of annoyed me a little bit. Because it's Burgle Bros, I think, wasn't it? We were looking at
That
playing.
was the one we were looking at. Yeah.
We were like, oh, we might as well play it because it looks fun. It looks kind of simple. You know, it looked kind of interesting, and it wouldn't let us play it because it was locked out. And I think that's the only thing I would say is, okay, put it this way: would you pay premium?
At the moment, no. I don't think. I think if it was the beginning of lockdown and we had a group of people that were going to come on and play consistently, like our biggest problem has been the fact that we haven't got people that are consistently coming to play. There's 4 of us that have been playing from week to week to week, and
Yeah.
it's nothing against Tabletopia, but I'm not gonna buy into it unless I've got those people that are willing to play as well. The good thing
Yeah.
is only one of us would have to have the premium account.
Oh, okay. So it's you can share it with the others, basically.
It's in order to open a table, basically. In order to open a table on, say, a 2-player Burgle Bros game, one of you will need a premium account, and they would have to open the room, basically.
So in a way, you could get a group of you to pay one account in a way, and in that way, someone's always the GM/DM.
Yeah. Like I say, the biggest like it has really been a problem, like getting people together to play games and stuff like that. But if you've got the group, there are plenty of tools out there to be able to actually play games. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've.
Okay.
I mean, I could channel Ian if you want, but I don't know if I don't know if my powers are that strong yet.
I've got a feeling Ian would bring up Wits and Wages again. I think that would be one, and I think Deception, Murder in Hong Kong would be the other one, I think.
I think so, and somewhat Secret Hitler.
Yeah, perhaps that one as well.
I think he enjoyed that quite a bit.
I think all 3 of us kind of agreed that those 3 were going to be the ones that we enjoyed playing most. But yeah, loads of stuff out there that is really great to play online. So get out there and let us know what you find are your favourite games to play online. Please let us know in the comments down below. Apart from that, thank you very much for joining us on this edition of the podcast. If you would like to find us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at EverybodyDice and at Everybody Dice Show for Instagram. Did I say Twitter or just social medias? Everybody Dice Show is Twitter.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, Everybody Dice for Twitter, at Everybody Dice Show for Instagram. There you go. Cover all the bases. Smooth as hell. The Patreon is actually on screen right now, just down there. Go there again if you would like to basically become a patron for as little as $1 a month, and I've explained to you all the stuff you get from that earlier on today. Apart from that, please give us a like, share, subscribe. Again, please comment about anything you've seen on the show down below. That really, really helps us out. And apart from that, thank you for joining us. Perhaps click something that's on screen right now. Again, that would really be helpful.
Please.
Thank you very much for joining us. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.